Hello. I'd like to talk with you again about Mary Minerva Dart and share one more story from her life. I shared the one about her being hung up with her sister on a picket fence to dry when they were very small girls because her father found them soaked from playing in the stream that ran next to their house. Well, today's story is something every bit as interesting, but not near as fun. And it starts when she's 11. The Dart family now has 9 children. So there's a father, John Dart, a mother, Lucy Roberts, and 9 children ranging from 17 to a just brand new baby. And the Dart family has left New York and the comfort of their wonderful home, and they have taken trains and boats and everything else to get to St. Louis, Missouri. And they've done that so that they can join with other members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that are gathering near St. Louis to travel west to Salt Lake City. The year is 1849. When they arrive, their father is advised by the church leader that they're gathering with to purchase a farm. And he does. John purchases this farm. It's already planted in corn and wheat. And when they harvest that fall, it brings in both food for the family and income for them. So the next spring in 1850, he is enabled to sell the farm and purchase a wagon and team and supplies. And then they gather at the mouth of the Platte River with the other members of the church and are ready to gather and join with everyone else to go west. They're organized into groups of 10s and 50s and 100s, and so that they have the best organization to go west with the rest of the saints, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that are traveling there. I'm going to read some of the things as quotes from a history that my grandfather wrote about his mother, who was the daughter of Mary Minerva Dart. So at this time, Mary has just turned 12. It's the spring of 1850, and they are leaving Missouri and traveling through Nebraska and on the way to Salt Lake. And this is quoting from the history he wrote. They traveled on the south side of the Platte River, where those going to California and Oregon traveled. The rest of the saints were advised to travel on the north side because those that traveled on the south side were more prone to getting cholera. Well, they were only into the travel ways, and they broke a wagon tongue. And while they were stopping to fix it, her brother George, her sister Harriet, and Mary's mother were all taken with the cholera. When they got the wagon tongue fixed and they traveled on, her brother died. They traveled on for about 4 miles and caught up to the rest of the company where they were camped. And here, the father, her father John, after dark, buried George's body. The night that George was buried, a terrible storm arose and made the trouble and the sorrow of that night even worse. Her sister, Harriet, also died and was buried next to her brother. And at this time, Mary's mother was so sick that the death of her 2 children didn't even seem to register. She couldn't even process what was going on because she was so sick at that time. So they traveled on and camped for the night near Fort Laramie, where the wagons were formed into a circle to make a corral, and a space was left for the gate. Their wagon was the last one with its back towards the gate, and then a chain was stretched across the gate to form a corral for the animals to be inside. During the night, though, something frightened the animals and they stampeded and ran into the chain and jerked the wagon. In the concussion and the raging of the storm, Mary's mother passed away. This is continuing with the quote from my grandpa, Elgin Oliphant, her grandson. He said, "No words can describe the heartache, the loneliness, the sense of loss of this 12-year-old girl, and of course the father and the rest of the family. To have her brother George and sister Harriet and mother taken so near together would have been an almost unbearable loss. If they could only have had a normal, decent funeral with a coffin and protection from the elements. But no, they had to leave this life as if the elements were sharing their loss. To be laid in an unmarked grave out in the wild country with no human habitation near, to be trampled over by buffalo, wolves, and wild Indians. God would have to help them bear their loss. They could not. They did not have the time to stop and grieve. They had to move on. Thus was Mary, our future great-grandmother," he said grandmother, "tempered and prepared for the life she was destined to live." End of his quote. So now, who's left? The father, John Dart. Mother is gone. Phoebe, now 18. Lucy Ann or Edna Dart, now 16. Harriet is gone. Mary Minerva Dart, now 12. John is now 10. Younger brother George, who would have been 8 at this time, is passed away. James is 6. Esther is 3. And Josephine is barely 1. Can you imagine that 1-year-old baby missing her mother, and in the middle of the travel to Salt Lake? I don't know how they ever fed that 1-year-old baby and kept her alive for the rest of that trip. That is the end of the story as we're going to tell it here. There's still much more to learn about Mary Minerva Dart and her life as she gets married just a few years later as a very young woman. She lived and did wonderful in that marriage. And the amazing stories of her and Zadok Napjud, who was a companion to Jacob Hamlin, and all of his amazing stories. So that's another story to tell at another time.